That's not compatible with democracy. Democracy is a really simple system, even representative democracy like ours. The people rule. They do so through elections. They express their preference through voting. They send their people to the capital city to run the government on their behalf. Whenever you have unelected people who are not accountable.
What's going on, you guys? Today we have Kyle Kulinski calling out Joe Rogan. Again, Joe Rogan had Tucker Carlson on, and they're both speaking really hypocritical. Kyle Kulinski's calling it out. I'm giving my commentary as well. Let's watch.
In a society dominated by big money and corruption. So these people would be the driving force behind conspiracies. Why would they target themselves? Why would the wealthy and the powerful take down like the beating heart of what they're doing? That doesn't seem to make sense. And if you make the argument that like, well, you know, Bush and Cheney did this because they wanted to do the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq, and we have the Project for a New American Century where the neocons laid this out very clearly. That part is true, but why wouldn't you, if you're going to do a false flag attack, why wouldn't you have an empty U.S. Navy ship and sink the U.S. Navy ship and not kill thousands of innocent civilians in the process? Right? And not kill a lot of people who are moneyed interests who are very powerful. Again, people with a lot of money and power and prestige died when the towers came down. In no conspiracy would they be a target. They would be the ones steering the ship and doing the conspiracy and driving the conspiracy. They wouldn't be the victims of the conspiracy, right? So if you're going to do some sort of a false flag, it would make a hell of a lot more sense to just sink like a U.S. Navy ship with nobody on it, claim you were attacked by Iraq. You know, it there's all these questions that arise. Like, also, if you wanted to use it to attack Iraq, why didn't they first come out and say it actually was Saddam Hussein who did it, and not say it was Osama, and then they had to spend a long time building the argument that Osama was protected by Saddam Hussein? They could have just came out and said Saddam did it and jumped right to the Iraq war. So it's just, there's a lot of things that don't really add up, right? And again, you have to try to get to the root of the conspiracy, to the premises, to the core of it. Like, what are we assuming is true here before you even dive into the specifics and the particulars? And like, look, on that front, there's a lot of things that sound super convincing when you talk about the 9/11 conspiracy theory, like the towers falling at free fall speed, right? This is one of the things that's in all the 9/11 truth documentaries. You drop a pool ball, billiard ball from the top of the World Trade Center, and in the amount of time it would take for that ball to hit the ground, it's the same amount of time that it took for the tower to collapse into the ground. And it's like, that's kind of crazy. So in other words, there was no resistance as the thing fell. It didn't take a while to do it.
And for context, Kyle Kulinski is talking directly about Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. They were going over the 9/11 so-called, they were going into conspiracies about it. And I was playing this clip because I think that it's important for people to see that, yeah, this is how conspiracies start, is that they sort of start off a lot of just like throwing crap at the wall, just seeing what sticks. And then from there, you build up this whole entire myth. I think that it's important to see why these stories stick. But definitely, yeah, as far as like the truth to them all, yeah, a lot of things they have a lot of loose ends in these stories.
It fell like immediately, collapsed into its own footprint. Now, look, I'm not a building engineer, but they certainly made a convincing sounding case in the 9/11 truth documentaries that were like, this isn't possible without explosives. But then you come back to what Rogan said there, which is like, yeah, but who rigged it, and wouldn't people have seen it? And that would have taken a really long time beforehand, and there's really nothing on the record of that happening. So anyway, you can get lost down that conspiracy rabbit hole, is my point. But I think what Tucker's doing, and there's going to be more evidence of this in a second, he knows he's not part of Fox News anymore. He's not part of traditional media anymore. It allows him to let his freak flag fly a little bit. And if anything, that'll get you more attention in the new media landscape and the independent media landscape, is be like, I'm the guy who's going to say the shit that other people won't say. And so now he's got one foot in like the conspiracy camp too, because he knows that's a great way to drive views. So, all right, now I'm still not done. Let's continue here. This one is actually a rare one. I think he gets this one right, if I'm being honest.
Members of Congress are terrified of the intel agencies. I'm not guessing at that. They've told me that, including people on the intel committee, including people who run the committee, the people whose job it is to oversee and keep in line these enormous secretive agencies whose budgets we can't even know. They're black budgets. They're the parents. The agencies are the children. They're afraid of the agencies. That's not compatible with democracy. Democracy is a really simple system, even representative democracy like ours. The people rule. They do so through elections. They express their preference through voting. They send their people to the capital city to run the government on their behalf. Whenever you have unelected people who are not accountable to anyone making the biggest decisions, you don't have a democracy, you have something else, another system. I would call it a tyranny or whatever you want to call it. It's not a democracy. So that's like super obvious. It's playing out in front of everyone and no one cares and no one does anything about it. And I think the reason is because they're threatened. And if you look at the committee chairmen who allow this shit to happen year after year, they're all, and I don't know, people say, oh, they're compromised or being blackmailed or whatever. I don't have evidence of that, but I know them. And they all have things to hide. I know that for a fact. And so it's not a stretch of imagination to imagine that, some committee chairman who's allowing warrantless spying on Americans to continue or whatever abuse they're allowing, knowing fully or hiding the truth about UAPs, ignoring the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. Like, why are they doing that? It's not impossible to imagine that some guy with a drinking problem or a weird sex life, and that's very common up there, that's why they're doing it. Because they don't want to be exposed. I don't have evidence of that. I don't have proof of that.
Right.
But that's not a crazy thing to assume that could be happening. And I said to somebody, a very powerful person, the other day in a conversation in my kitchen, an elected official, holds a really senior position, a very famous person. I was going crazy. I was so mad about all this stuff and about the warrantless spying and about the funding for these insane wars. And I said to the guy who serves in one of the legislative bodies, like, I was so mad my dogs were afraid. They're like, well, why are you yelling? Because I don't yell at home. But I was like, all these people are controlled. They're all, got weird sex lives and all these things are hiding and they're being blackmailed by the intel agencies. And he said, and I'm quoting, I know. I was like, okay, so at this point we're just sort of admitting that's real? Like, why do we allow that to continue?
Yeah, that point is undeniable. Look, the CIA.
Right. Look, I agree with what Kyle Kulinski is saying right here. Tucker Carlson is not far off. Joe Rogan is not far off. Yes, whenever you have unelected people that are making decisions that aren't accountable to anyone, that is the biggest thing, is that because they are unelected, you don't have people that were saying, oh, we were rooting for you. Oh, you made this promise, you made that promise. Yes, I think that's wrong, especially whenever you have these agencies that are in charge and you may have these things. This sets the ground to where now you do have an unelected person who has an office in the White House. And now it's just even more overt of like, okay, well, yes, it's not these agencies running it, but now we're going to have, Elon Musk running certain things that are going on. We're going to have these, it just makes room for the private sector to completely take over and to gut this system. It's not going to be accountability, more transparency. It's actually going to be less. And we're still going to lose out on the fact that a lot of these companies, as far as the private sector is concerned, the best way that they will continue to, keep up with competition, quote unquote, is to cut corners. This is very obvious. So you have one that has an agenda of wanting to control for power, and then you have the other side, which is to me just as bad whenever its agenda is to make as much money as possible and for them to win off of this. And it's like we're getting screwed either way.
The NSA, the intelligence agencies absolutely are out of control. You have people there who are basically like career bureaucrats who are there from administration to administration to administration. So that's why they're called the deep state. They're the ones who are there for a very extended period of time. And it's not like an administration that comes in and goes out. It could be 4 years. It could be 8 years. It's not like a congressperson or a senator who, again, they're up for re-election at some point. These are the people that have real permanent power and staying power. And you get some of the worst atrocities committed by, say, the CIA, meddling in foreign countries, overthrowing governments, funding death squads. I mean, you name it. The NSA illegally spying on all Americans going back to the days of the Patriot Act, and it was just reauthorized recently. Well, how could they allow this? Why would they allow this? I mean, look, I don't know if it's as nefarious as they have dirt and they're willing to use it on these people to make them vote a certain way. But certainly they have some degree of power that appears above and beyond the Congress people, or at least it's in cahoots with all the politicians, right? So it is kind of unacceptable. Now, the final point I will make, though, is that, Tucker's a guy he's like very openly and publicly kind of a Trump supporter. And I think he views Trump as like a bulwark against the deep state.
There we have it, you guys. We have Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. They're just setting the groundwork up for, just for more of this buying into of the right of the conservative savior that is Donald Trump, that will be the one who isn't and who doesn't have these corporations in his pockets, that isn't completely ran by Wall Street. But at the very end of the day, who is he? Who is Donald Trump? Donald Trump, is he actually going to be able to take care of all the American people? He's a man. He still has his blind spots, but it seems like he is completely surrounded himself by yes men, by people that are allowing him to completely just side with Israel, to completely just take over the country in a way that is going to really be detrimental and send us backwards. At full speeds now, given that no one really wants to call him out, everyone sort of just wants to see what happens, quote unquote. Like, yeah, kiss my ass. We're going straight down the gutter. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. It's another day in the progressive way.